Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Progress with number 48 in the series Viewers Games. This one is from John from Greece. Hello, I'm John from Greece and this is a game I had last week. I'm a new chess player, started playing from November, and this game especially, my opponent really surprised me with that knight move. And at first I was confused, but then I found a way out. I hope you will see it and maybe you will upload it and show me if I played it right. It is a 10+0 game at leadchess.org, so 10 minutes per player for the whole game. John was black in this game. Let's have a look. And let's have a look at that knight move that John is talking about. His opponents played knight f3 and John answered with d5, g3, knight f6, bishop g2, bishop g4, d4, e6. Black has made sure that his queen's bishop, is outside of the pawn chain. White castled, the bishop d6, and white is kicking that bishop with h3. You can play bishop h5 here, but John decided to take, which is fine. Bishop took back, and c5, c3, John castled, bishop g5, pinning the knight. This could be an uncomfortable pin. And John decides to kick that bishop straight away with h6. Bishop back to e3. And now black is to be careful. His c5 pawn is attacked twice, only defended once by the bishop. And John solves that problem by playing c4. Queen c1, and with moves like that you always have to worry about sacrifices on h6 with two pieces attacking there. John may have looked at it, but he decided rightly that it was not very dangerous. He played b5, continuing his expansion on the queen side. Bishop takes h6 here is indeed not very good, because that piece of course gets taken, and after queen takes, a good move here would be knight h7, followed by queen f6, threatening to swap the queens, and white does not have enough for his piece. These pieces are still undeveloped, he's not able to set up a quick attack. So white did not take on h6, he played bishop f4. That's why he played queen c1, to make sure that bishop is protected by the queen, that he doesn't have to take back with the pawn if black takes. And black did take, John took, queen takes to make sure the pawn formation from white stays intact, and a5. John keeps going on the queen side. a3, knight c6, knight d2 developing, and b4, which makes sense, but there's a tactical flaw why this is not a good move. We'll see that in a second. A takes b4, A takes b4, and the tactical flaw is that now white could have taken on c4. Because if you take back, you notice that your knight on c6 is unprotected, and white has won a pawn. White did not see this. He took on a8, queen takes back, and now he saw it. But it is a move too late. He took on c4, but now it doesn't work, for the simple reason that the knight is now protected. So knight takes c4 must have been this move, this knight move that John mentioned in his introduction. So he took it. The knight on c6 is protected by the queen, no problem there. White took on b4, wins a second pawn for the piece. Of course, black cannot take that piece because then the queen will be hanging. But it's still a good deal for black. Black is better here. He played knight d5, good move, attacking the queen and attacking that b pawn for a second time. Queen d6 was played, and now both these pawns are hanging. John decided to take the d pawn. Bishop takes d5, and here a nice in-between move is knight takes e2 check. That could have been played as an in-between move, picking up another pawn. But John decided to take with the queen. Queens were swapped. That's of course also a good deal for black. If your material up, it is good to swap pieces, not necessarily pawns, but swapping pieces is generally a good idea. And black has a winning position here with its extra piece. e3, attacking the knight. Knight b3, rook d1, attacking this pawn. So John defends it with rook d8. b5, pass pawns must be pushed, but that pawn is not very powerful. It doesn't have any support. f5 from John, b6, that pawn is going nowhere. King f7, king g2, king e6, g4, g6, king f3, centralizing the king. So does John. A pawn was swapped. Rook g1. White is trying to get counterplay over the open g file. King f6, making sure the rook does not enter. h4, rook b8 attacking the pawn, and h5. And now white does have an entry point for his rook. Black is still winning, but he has to be careful. When that rook comes to g6, it's attacking the h6 pawn, and the white h pawn might become dangerous. Of course, you cannot take on b6 here because of rook g6 check, and you lose the rook, and it's white who wins. A good move here would have been king e5, and if you then play rook g6, you start running with your own pawns. d4 is a good move, and black is still winning. But here John made a mistake. He played knight d2 check. It's hard to see that it was a mistake. We have to forgive John. But white now gets a lot of counterplay. If he had played king f4, then he would have enough compensation for the material he's down. For example, let's look at one variation, knight e4, then rook g6 check, king f7, and king takes f5. And suddenly white has good counterplay, and this position is about equal. It's a very sharp position, very difficult to play. Hard to foresee that after knight d2 check, white's counterplay would develop so quickly, but it does if white had played king f4 going forward. But he went backwards, he went to e2, and now things are okay again for black. That king on e2 is very passive. Knight e4, there comes rook g6 check as planned, and if John had played king f7 here, then white can take on h6, but here's a nice move, knight f6, restricting that rook. You cannot win the rook, of course the rook can always go back to g6 where it is protected, but that rook does not a lot on h6, and black will just pick up this pawn and probably that pawn and is winning. But John made a big blunder here. He played king e5. A logical move. He wants to push that d pawn probably, but there's a small problem with it. And you may want to look for yourself what that small problem is. And that small problem is that it is a mate in one, which white missed. f2, f4 is checkmate on the board. And white did pick up his f-pawn virtually, but only moved it to f3. Was it a mouse slip, or did he really not see the checkmate? We'll never know. Knight back to f6, and suddenly everything is okay again for black. That checkmate is now gone. White took on h6, rook takes b6, rook h8, and there goes another pawn. Now black is totally winning again. King has to go to the bottom rank. Rook h2, putting the rook behind the pass pawn, very good move. h6, and there goes black's pawn, c3. Rook behind that pawn, d4, rook c5 check, knight interposes. King g1, harassing the rook, rook takes on h6, e takes d4, king takes attacking the rook, rook c8, rook g6 check, king f2, knight f4, rook d8 check, Knight interposes. Rook c8. Rook a6. King g3. f4 check. King g4. There's nothing more to play for white, but there's a few more moves. Rook a2. Preparing c3, c2. King f5. There goes the pawn. King e6. Knight c3. Threatening to promote. Rook d8 check is a last spy check, and after King e3, white resigned. Good win from John. Well played, John. You indeed very nicely sussed out that knight move, that knight takes c4. You refuted that, and you had a winning position. Knight d2 check gives white too much counterplay if white had played the king to f4 going forward. And apart from that, King e5, of course, was a bad mistake, allowing mate in 1. But that can happen in a game with only 10 minutes for the whole game. Overall, I think you played really well, and thank you for sending me this game so I could share it with this Chess to Progress community. Hope you liked the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the Chess to Progress channel. Please leave a comment, and please share the video on social media. You also may want to check out my Chess to Impress channel. The link is in the description box. This is Rick for Chess to Progress. Thank you for watching.